It's really good to see all of you. It's amazing to be here in this mountain framing. I mean, it's spectacular, isn't it? The sun's shining. It always shines, I assume. Awardco team, it always shines here. Always. Yeah, I figured. Amazing to be part of this session. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm going to have to be careful. Yell at me because I move around and the stage looks like I could get hurt. So just wave at me if I'm too close to the edge. As you listen today, you're amazing people. I can tell just by looking out at you. I would like you to listen from a human perspective, not from an expert perspective. Sometimes expertise kind of dulls and numbs the ability to really think about a problem and think about the way forward. And then as you listen as humans, certainly apply your expertise because we're going to talk about some challenging things for sure and some really cool opportunities. I've gotten to work in healthcare for my whole career. Amazing purpose-driven work for me, very inspiring. That's probably true for you too. Just incredible to have the opportunity to work in healthcare. A lot of what I'm going to say today isn't meant to be offensive or challenging about healthcare. It's reflective of my experience in leading in healthcare. And it's built on a long road of failure and leadership for me to really change the experience of working in healthcare. I did not build the kind of work environment that I would have wanted to build. So we get into these meetings and we think a lot about why is it so hard to retain teams? Why is turnover so high? Why are the shortages continuing to grow? What is this problem set and how do we address it? And one of the tendencies is to do a lot of victim blaming. If the team wasn't a bunch of millennials or Gen Z, and if they weren't just lazy and didn't like to work the same way, we'd be fine. You know, if our nurses weren't so cynical, you know, and the stupid union came in and now it's just about a constant negotiation that never ends. When the truth is, if the nurses and the Gen Z and the millennial employees didn't do anything, there's so much you can still do to transform the way the workplace feels and the way it functions. And I'm going to talk through that a bit. It's so dangerous as a leader to let go of the steering wheel, right? Because the leadership journey is this never-ending journey of incremental improvement over time, and when you retire, you aren't done, and someone else takes over. I mean, that's what you signed up for, right? It's pushing a rock up a hill continuously your entire career, never cresting the top, but the effort of pushing is why you're in leadership, because someone needs to push the rock. That's what it's all about. It's amazing how often we say, you know, people are just so money motivated. So money motivated in healthcare. All they want is more and more and more. And man, I remember when the average RN made $20 an hour, and now the average RN makes $45 an hour in my market, and it's just killing us. And it's still not enough. They want even more. But in many ways, healthcare organizations are like burning buildings. And we're telling people, please come in and work inside. And they say, the building's on fire. No, but really, it's very meaningful to work in a burning building. And the meaning of working in a burning building should be enough. Please come inside. And they look at us and they say, why aren't you putting the fire out? And we say, don't worry about it, it's too complicated, just come inside. And then they say, how much will you give me? And it makes complete sense, right? How much will you give me to go in that burning building? And that gets to comp, it gets to Awardco, it gets to all kinds of things. But how are we addressing this burning building problem? The fundamental toxicity of healthcare work. And I don't mean toxicity like everybody's a bunch of evil leaders. I mean like built-in toxicity that goes with healthcare as a career choice. So let's get into a few facts, and we're going to build on these a little bit as we go through. You know the challenges. You've seen all the data. You may even see some of this data more than once in this conference. But it's good framing, and it's part of this burning building problem. And I want to make sure to set some context that helps build on the next set of conversations we'll have. So a lot of people feeling somewhat disengaged, not entirely fully engaged, not thrilled to be there, pretty stressed, opportunities to go other places. I'll bet if you work in a town and there's another health system in the town, you all trade employees all the time, right? Back and forth and back and forth. Someone told me, you know, it'd be transformational if there was a single HR department for the town and you just staffed all the hospitals. Then people couldn't hop around, you know? So there's an innovative idea. If you want to try that, let me know. I'd love to watch that. It probably would save you a lot of money if you could figure it out, right? Just staff Salt Lake City and just be done with it. And then everybody, they're out of options, right? They're going to stay. A lot of people intend to leave. Pay and benefits continue to rise. And a lot of people say, you know, it was better before COVID. But it's really interesting. Because can we just look in the mirror and say, it was pretty bad before COVID? Look at the left side of this. It really strikes me, the critical care nurses, this is Deloitte interviewing 700 critical care nurses and asking them on a scale of 1 to 10 to rate a number of factors. This is 2019, no one had heard of COVID. 61% of critical care nurses rated their physical health a 5 or lower on a 10-point scale in 2019, unrelated to COVID. And in 2019, 51% of critical care nurses listed their mental health as 5 or lower on a 10-point scale before COVID. This is the team we took into the front lines of COVID. Think about that. Where the death rate spikes and everyone's on a vent and you're constantly working and afraid of transmitting something to your family, you're already, the majority of you, struggling physically and mentally. And what's your organization doing about it? Well, hopefully they care, but it's very interesting. I look at my own work. So I was talking to a content moderation firm. This is a terrible job. Content moderation, those are the people that go on the internet and look at the worst things and make sure we don't have to see them. And now AI can do some of that, but real people have to do some of that. The content moderation firm, number one, has a neuroscience department for their workforce. Do you have a neuroscience department for your workforce? I mean, no, you don't. You don't. Healthcare doesn't even think about this, in my experience. They have a neuroscience department around their workforce. Why? Because they understand inherently in content moderation, there is trauma-inducing work. Is there trauma-inducing work in healthcare? 100%. These people in content moderation are looking at pictures. People in healthcare systems are seeing open wounds in real people. But do we have a neuroscience department? No. Guess what? In content moderation, they have to do weekly therapy no matter how they're feeling. It's required. One. Two, the neuroscience department has learned some amazing things. If you look at black and white pictures, it's less traumatizing than color pictures, so people watch all the pictures in black and white, and it helps resilience. Number two, find cultures where things aren't viewed as terrible as in other cultures. I mean, it's not a good thing that some cultures see cruelty to animals as through a different lens than our culture does, but make sure the people in that culture look at cruelty to animals, and people in America don't, because it'll destroy us. They've thought about this stuff. How are we thinking about it in healthcare, right? These are pretty deep topics. And it's not just a problem set. I have some thoughts on solutions, so don't worry. It's not just a downer, but it's real, right? Listening as human beings, you realize there's a lot we could be doing. There are corollary industries where we're doing those things. Wow, regular therapy. Wow, neuroscience analysis of how to de-traumatize the work. How does this happen? People can handle a lot. People can handle a lot. If the sense of purpose is high, there's self-efficacy, meaning you can choose what you do throughout your day. You can handle a ton of stress. When those things are absent, you get kind of brittle. It gets tough. Staffing shortages, high turnover rates, healthcare wage inflation, these things continue. They're ongoing, and the shortage problem is massive. I have twin daughters. By the way, Ryan, they spent a week in the NICU after they were born prematurely, so people like your mom, amazing impact on our life. Healthcare is amazing that way, right? The impact, like forever impact on families. My daughters both were super excited to become advanced practice providers. They both joined nursing programs, and they both have quit nursing programs and moved into other fields in the course of their college training. That's happening a lot. Why did they do that? Because they entered college as COVID hit, and COVID scared them away from nursing. Statistically, that's happening in a lot of cases. With COVID aside, though, the training trends are not great. And this is true, as you know, in many fields in healthcare. But look at the number of nurses passing the exams. You could say it's largely flat through 2023. A little bit of a blip in 21 and 22, and then a settling in 23. Meanwhile, the shortage just keeps growing because the demand and the need for nurses grows. Now, I think technology, generative AI, augmenting the workforce with cool capabilities is going to be able to take us from 1.2 work effort to 0.75 work effort, and it's going to start shifting this, but it's not ready yet. It's not happening yet. So this is a reality right now. The combination of the pressure this creates and an unaddressed work environment, which is poorly designed and not being redesigned, is weighing heavily. There's some cool stuff. I just mentioned the unprecedented technology. It's amazing. We're investing in a bunch of generative AI capabilities, and don't worry about some doctor replacement trying to do diagnosis like you'd hear in the scary news story. Like really basic, safe stuff is starting to emerge in the generative AI space that's amazing. I've spent a lot of time talking to generative AI, post-operative follow-up and pre-operative prep and social isolation and care management agents that are being built that are entirely computers and can have an hour of conversation with you that's as engaging as you've ever had with any human being. And the ability to do things we've never done. By the way, that agent costs 5 cents an hour to run compared to a call center of $90 an hour. So this is going to be transformational. It's coming down the road. It's going to help address some of the shortage dynamics and augment the capabilities and work side by side with key staff. Many jobs can be automated. Most jobs can be augmented. And it's going to be really interesting to see healthcare adjust to these realities. Societal shifts, we talked about Gen Z. You know, I'm ready for my promotion the moment I start my job. Where is it? I'm ready for my career track. You know, and I'd really like flexible hours, and I'd like to be able to come in no earlier than 10, please. Then millennials, you know, who are becoming the majority of the workforce quickly, right? If not already, they're going to leave their job routinely and see that as actually part of a meaningful career, is pathways through multiple roles and careers, not 40 years at a place, getting up on stage during the award ceremony and hearing, I've been there 40 years. That's like a failure for them, right? I didn't experience, you know, the variety of positive career choices I could have had. Transaction costs are decreasing. It's interesting, the agility and the gig economy and the gig preference. There was a story just this week that came in my news feed, so it may or may not be true, but it was in Apple News. Does that mean it's true? It said that 39% of people have one primary job. I don't know if you've heard, it blew my mind as I was preparing for this conversation. 39% of people have one primary job, with the majority of people having from 0 to multiple jobs. And this idea of gig work and multiple jobs and balancing a bunch of things and even tricking your employer and working 2 jobs in a hybrid environment, whatever. Lots going on out there. Multi-platforming, for sure. It's so easy to connect on social media that, as you know, as you watch your Glassdoor and other things, you know, it's really easy for good word to get out and bad word to get out. And as usual, bad travels more quickly than good. All of those changes, unfortunately, the current workforce isn't prepared for. You can see for the new emergence of technology, and even the rates of yes, I feel prepared, generally is built on not enough knowledge. I don't really understand enough to say yes, but I said yes because I think I should say yes, that I'm prepared, but I'm not really prepared. That's going to be interesting. Emotionally prepared, mentally prepared, the analytical requirements and the clinical requirements. Interesting time. In our work at General Catalyst, we've built what we're calling the Health Assurance Transformation Company, and we're trying to build, along with venture, which we invest in amazing companies, many startups, many really early, a lot of tech, but also other types of companies that are very innovative. They don't translate well to risk-averse, glacially moving, massive enterprises, right? They can look really sloppy. They don't often connect well into the total picture. So we realize for transformation to happen in healthcare, we have to help health systems accelerate the transformation and find things that patch together can really change the way things are done in every element of the healthcare system. That's my job. That's what I get to do, and it's really fun. And we've written a transformation playbook with 7 chapters, and one of the chapters is workforce transformation, and I'm going to go through our thinking there. But we have a working group for each of those chapters made up of people like you, made up of healthcare professionals. And we've pulled together that working group and spoken at depth and done some surveying on the top issues to address in healthcare workforce. And we do an annual conference called the Agents of Change Conference, which is health system CEOs and other types of CEOs coming in that are related to healthcare. And we've surveyed them. And it's interesting, the results on the 2 sides you can see here. The top 3, the agents of change, these more 100,000-foot leaders sitting together, they said, we've got to make life easier for our caregivers. Which I say a hearty yes, absolutely. I think most of our caregivers view things we've done as making life harder, more complicated, adding time to dictate without adding buffer time to do it, pajama time, all those issues. Decrease the administrative burden is part of that. One of the leaders said it's parasitic, and I agree with that. There's a parasitic overhead weight in healthcare, just the mess. Did you know in healthcare, revenue cycle management is a $140 billion industry in the US. And the auto industry is a $90 billion industry. So just sending out bills and collecting money in healthcare is massively bigger than the auto industry. Pretty shocking, because I mean, that's just accounts receivable. It could be so much easier. Remove regulatory barriers, things like time to licensing, and honestly, from nurses to doctors, a lot of them act like protective guilds. They act to protect and limit the number of people, thereby creating a problem that makes them miserable without recognizing kind of the feedback loop, and we're all kind of stuck in that environment. So those issues are very important for the practitioners, the executives, and on the people team. The ability to drive flexibility and support gig style or flexible style work was the #1 topic they're wrestling with. And when they say wrestling, they generally mean that they haven't figured it out yet. It's still in the works. Requiring the shortages that require shifts with tech and augmenting capabilities or even replacing certain capabilities and then reskilling teams, and then new models of education and certification. So we've spent a lot of time digging into this and thinking about what is the list of things that healthcare systems could be doing better, and holding that steering wheel. And regardless of whether someone's a Gen Z or a Gen X, regardless of how they're thinking and the actions they're taking, what can we do to make our organizations better? So I'll start with rhetorical questions. I will not ask you to answer these questions live, although that would be fun. 1, do you have a human intelligence platform that allows you to know your team well enough? So imagine this scenario. Imagine if you have an opening on 4 East for a supervisor. And imagine that you very quickly can find that a nurse on 3 North, a nurse on 2 South, and a nurse in the ER are your top 3 internal candidates for that position, because you have the right intelligence platform. And imagine if you can call those 3 nurses because they've passed their duration of initial employment, where your policy says you won't poach internally. They've passed that. And they're available now for promotions. That nurse, regardless of the opinion of their manager or director, gets a phone call that says, you're a top candidate for this promotion. What does that nurse think when they get that call? I didn't see the job. I didn't have to look for the posting. I didn't hear buzz around the organization. I didn't find out an external candidate was hired after the fact. I got a call as the first option for the organization to fill a position because, wow, they employ 10,000 people, but they clearly know who I am and that I'm qualified. So if you're tempted to say we have this human intelligence platform, I challenge you, can you do what I just described? And if you can't, you got work to do. Because here's the amazing thing, and we've done some analysis around this. Think about the vascular system of the organization being its team. And the inflows of its team ideally being really just at the entry level. And then the vascular system of the organization allowing those people to move upward based on their performance and capability. And you having the vision where internal positions that are upwardly mobile are regularly filled by internal, not external candidates who are ready to go, so that most of your external recruitment is at the entry level where it's easier and the pool is bigger. This is also an amazing opportunity to diversify your team because you can bring in low bar people and then reskill and upskill and promote and train into positions that maybe those individuals would not have opted in for through the normal course of growing up and deciding how to be educated. Huge opportunity here. So question 1. Question 2, do you have a work redesign and reskilling strategy, including the critical skills of the future? Like a written strategy, like you could say, you could slap it down on my desk. Boom, here it is. We have a strategy, we have a multi-year component to that strategy. We're working hard on this. My experience of the design of work in the organizations where I led, I did a lot of rounding. I would go round with nurses for like a 4-hour block, and I would just like walk with them and get in their way, and they would give me terrible things to do, you know, like hold this while someone was throwing up. That literally happened. Hold this, and I'm, okay. They want you to feel it, right? They want you to feel what it's like in their environment. And that was really helpful to me. But I learned one thing. The process used by every single nurse in the organizations where I led was entirely different and customized for that person. They invented it. They invented it. There was a guy with a holster, and he had his tools on his hip, and he had a little spreadsheet he'd made at home that he now used for his kind of on-the-go charting before he sat down. Another lady I worked with literally wrote on her arm. She had stuff all over her arm. This is the work environment. I mean, these are sophisticated organizations, but honestly, we could do some work on design. We could do some work on design and on leadership capabilities. Design's important because when the design is right, then reskilling is more effective because you know how the job is designed and then you know the skill match better. So sloppy leads to sloppy leads to sloppy, and it's such a busy, chaotic environment, by the way, that largely grows people outside of areas of expertise into leadership, right? So a great nurse becomes a nursing supervisor, becomes a nurse manager, becomes a nursing director. Never once, perhaps, taking an HR course of study or a finance course of study, but ultimately has grown up into a role where HR and finance are kind of important. So it's not surprising that practice is all over the board, but how does the organization deal with that? Because those absolutely are the people that need to be leading in those areas, but how are they prepared for those areas? And then how is that future-proofed? Interesting opportunity here. Have you built a plan for the tools that will make work easier and your team smarter? What a great place for kind of a shared governance approach, right? Where everybody sits around and thinks about what kinds of tools are emerging. Let's explore them together. Let's look at the possibilities and the feasibility of these tools, and then let's figure out how these get layered in. What kind of co-pilots are we going to engage? Are we thinking about co-pilots for nurses? Tools that create secure texting that allow the nurse to talk to the chart like it's a colleague. Hey, what was this guy's blah, blah, blah. Hey, when did we last blah, blah, blah. What was the last lab result? What was the order, blah, blah, blah. And a text response instead of scrolling through the mass of the chart. How about an earpiece and being able to talk to the chart and have it talk back to you in a human voice? How about ambient listening and auto scribing for nurses and doctors? Take the entire documentation effort away from human beings. How about auto-compliant documentation programs? As you start exploring those and sitting down with teams, and it's not a fear factor so much, you're going to replace me as, well, that would really help me. That would really help me. That would make my life so much better if I didn't have to spend 30% of my time documenting. I get what you're trying to do. You're not trying to replace me. You're trying to help me. Let's figure this out. Big, big moves here. This is an incredible, incredible space. One of our companies has the ability, I'm all the time like just in awe of all these different companies. They're just so narrow, it's hard to find them. Well, like if you stitched them all together, wow, this company can take any old broken process. You don't even have to redesign it. And it can, like, let's say it takes me 14 clicks and 3 passwords to go through the process, and I do it 20 times a day. This little brain just plugs in and watches me do it 20 times a day, and it's learned it, and then it can do it from then on forward forever, and I don't have to do it. I just click one button, and the 14 clicks and the 3 passwords and all that work that's routinized happens. The little AI brain does it instead of me doing it all day, freeing me up to do much more interesting things. I spent time in college entering accounts payable for a fireplace manufacturer, and it was like hours of the same data entry off of invoices all day. That kind of stuff can go away, so people can be reskilled and do really meaningful work instead of that kind of data entry. And it's really exciting to think about how organizations get reformed to do that. Does your team feel a sense of self-efficacy and safety in the workplace? A lot of people don't feel like they have the ability, because it's kind of a treadmill, it's so structured, it's so busy, that they have the ability and the flexibility to explore their own purpose creation. How do you combine standardization and design with that sense of self-efficacy? It has to be really well thought out. And safety, violence in the workplace has just gone up in healthcare, right? Continues to go up. How safe do people feel? But also not just about violence. How safe do they feel related to their mental well-being? Their ability to be whole and human and vulnerable in the workplace. Are you still in kind of the old school world of don't bring your problems to work? Or are you in the world where you're accepting people as holistic human beings and able to start to manage things before they get to be problematic or even criminal? Part of the reason that we let people get all the way to stealing from the Pyxis and being fired or going to prison is because we don't have those early warning sign, low stigma, vulnerability moments where we can talk about struggle and find a path through struggle. It's really interesting in healthcare, but part of us not wanting to talk about it leads to the big problems we get into later, and it's something really important to address. And then the virtual staffing, staff augmentation capability here. I love the virtual staffing possibilities for the future. A nurse who's working on the floor of an acute care hospital actually has a career limit, kind of like Tom Brady did. It's really hard work, it's really physical work, and for the most part, you don't work on med surg until you retire. You go find something else to do. And it's a real problem, it creates churn internally. But what if there was a virtual nursing center? What if you could be a virtual preceptor? In the later stages of graduate nurse training, you could do that virtually instead of in person. That virtual nurse could handle 5 people because they're not walking around physically. They may be in their ear or in other ways connected. That's a perfect role for an experienced nurse who's ready to get off the floor and go into a virtual nursing center. Amazing opportunities there. Real human beings, but different environments and different demands. And then a way to maximize the captured intellect of an entire group of people. So these kinds of questions, and there are more, led to us creating this transformation stack that we think every healthcare system should be really thinking about. And one thing we've noticed in each of our categories of work with health systems, we've noticed that they're at the top for the most part. They're on the crust level. Like around consumer empowerment, there's a lot of work around digital front doors, like registration, scheduling. There's almost no work on creating personalization and an always-on method for knowing who you are, or a care navigation model that stays with you even when your doctor's in and out of the treatment process, instead of creating digital front doors. Same is true in workforce transformation. We're focused a lot on retention and recognition, thank goodness. It's very important. Staff safety and support, these are critical efforts. But what about the bottom of the stack? the human intelligence platform I referenced, augmenting the work, standardizing care, reskilling and upskilling, virtual forward as discussed, and then we get into some of the things that are more commonly being battled, but with a better foundation, where we know our teams, we know our tools, and we're building them collectively together. I think healthcare has to be, and maybe it's just my wiring, the most meaningful possible career choice. You think about work that other people get to do or have to do in life, and you think about what happens in healthcare organizations. What makes it hard also makes it special and makes it worth the kind of investment that you put into your work around people management. It's interesting if you think about that, then the special people and the level of care that those special people should have wrapped around them. And what I've found is actually what's happening is a two-headed monster. A growing leadership cynicism about their people. So instead of that sense of special and protected and wonderful purpose-driven possibilities and have a responsibility, it's more of annoyance and frustration. And a sense even that our people could tank this organization because of the cost of people and the inefficiency and effectiveness that's perceived sometimes around people. The second problem is apathy. Well, we've tried everything, it's never worked, and so we're kind of giving up. We're just going to live in the rapids. We're going to try to keep our head above water, and we're just going to survive. Annoyance and apathy are not great leadership models. And I mean, leave them for other industries. Leave them for the financial industry. Leave them for the retail industry. Don't let those things grow in healthcare, because the opportunity exists to do something spectacular. And the community asset status is unavoidable. It is who we are in healthcare. And it's so important to take that extremely, extremely seriously. I love this work. I think you love this work as well. I think the people who do it are special. I think they're flawed and they're human. But the opportunity is there to do a lot better job in leadership. And we're looking for leaders who want to really grab hold of that mantle and charge forward with it. So with all of that said, we don't know everything. You know a lot. We're constantly wanting to learn. And that learning orientation is really going to be important over the next decade. I would love, if it's okay with the organizers, looks like we have a little time, I would love to take questions or have a dialogue with you, or challenge, feel free to challenge some of our assumptions or question a little bit more deeply some of what I've described. I would love the opportunity to chat a bit with you. And let me give you a clue to my personality. I've led health systems for most of my career, and that means I've done a lot of town halls. And that means I'm very, very good at silence, and you're going to feel more awkward than I do. So I don't want you to feel that way. Secondly, I will come onto the floor and I will approach you and I will ask you to join the conversation. So with those two threats in mind, I'd love questions that you might have for me.
If you have a question, wait till I get this big blue box here. This is actually a microphone. If you feel comfortable, you can actually throw it. It's called a catch box. So
those are cool, and it's especially fun when you're talking into it like this. All right, comments, questions. How does this grab you? Challenges you see that weren't addressed here. Opportunities you see that weren't addressed here. Yeah. The blue box.
I didn't want the microphone. So Matt from Guthrie Healthcare Systems in Pennsylvania and New York. Really, we're working on getting a process to have that talent found within our internal talent pool.
Awesome.
Prior to looking outside. We have Oracle as our Oracle Cloud is our platform that we use. And one of the biggest things is to get that data into the system is to have people provide that information of their talent and within their talent profile of the skills, kind of some of the different things that would make them the best fit that may not normally be captured by the information we already have.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything that has been a good tip or trick to get people to want to complete that? And also, I've seen a lot of people that have been nurses, they see what leadership does. They don't necessarily want to do that. And to move into those positions, we have to have those people that want that aspiration.
Right.
So how do we kind of guide and direct them to, aspire to want to move into those positions, based with all the adversity and challenges we've seen in healthcare in these past, few years especially?
Yeah. So reaction one to that is, I think we should know people's aspirations and we should honor those aspirations. If they're not to leadership, what are they toward? Perhaps an area of specialization. Perhaps it's to be in that place for a long time, which is great. That's phenomenal. As long as they're good, right? They're performing well. So, but capturing that's your earlier question. How do you capture the mix of skills and the aspirations? And I think there's one really important aspect to that, and that is some leadership standards and models that all leaders are trained to and then expected to uphold. I don't know, how many of you think your human resources platform performs the way you'd like it to? Just raise your hand. Do you think it's everything you need? Typical response. I mean, we've looked at all of them. There's a lot of pretty crusty ones. I think the best one I've seen, which we have no investments in, is Workday. And I think if you really kind of unlock Workday, it's pretty good. But you can have Workday, let's just take my thinking that it's the best out there right now. You can take Workday and have leadership variability that's massive in the organization. It doesn't bring the value out of it, which I think is the point you're making, which is a critical point. Because it really takes the leaders engaging person by person in order to fill out the skill map, in order to fill out the aspirational, where do you want to be. It takes a reasonable span of control. I'm sure you all have worked on span of control. It has to get down to a point where real human beings can have conversations with real people and get some of those answers out. I haven't seen it work as well in kind of a cold survey approach. People don't take it, they don't complete it, they wonder what it's about. Is this going to hurt my career versus help my career? So I think human interaction is going to be important.
Yeah, I think people need to see it work. When you don't have it fully informed, where you can show the success stories of, hey, this is what the root cause of what we're trying to do. It's for you. It's a benefit for us as an organization, as well as your career growth and development, because we do see that a lot. If there's not room for growth, like you said, there's some people that are happy just doing the status quo, what they're doing. They don't want to do anything more. But then we have people that really, if there's not a path for them growth in the organization, you lose that top talent instead of retaining it. So we just want to continue to utilize that and leverage the systems we do have to benefit us, because time is the biggest thing with people working at the bedside, clinically. It's very tough to get them to interact with computers, systems. They're like, I don't have time for that. So again, leadership, same thing. It's giving them the time and showing the value. And I just didn't know if there was anything that you've seen implemented, over your career that's been like, this has really worked to get people to do that initial, I want to put this in the system. Having a known,
now I'm careful about the English trap we fall into whenever I use a healthcare terminology, right? So I'd rather talk about a career path than a clinical ladder, right? Because you think immediately about a clinical ladder this way. But the truth is that the majority of team members would like to know a career path, and they would like to know the achievement levels. Most of us, if we interact with any app on our phone, we'll get badges and stars, and we chase those. They're meaningless, but we chase them. In college, we chase grades. In high school, we chase grades. In our career, we don't know how to chase. We don't know how we're doing. It's more amorphous. We never quite arrive. We don't know what our career path is. So the most important thing, I think, is that people know there is a way, like in the military, pretty good at it, right? Kind of know your path, you know your tests, you know your rank, you know how to get to the next rank. And you don't necessarily change jobs a lot from one rank to the other until certain meaningful changes. But some of those are more sideways, but they feel like something, right? I mean, you know, even you could have 4 stars on your apron, like Cracker Barrel, right? I mean, there's something. So how does that come to life? And then how do people know that part of how you're doing that is getting information from them? So that they can follow those levels, they can level up in the organization. That can be a promotion, that can be just a position of respect, a new logo on their badge or shirt, all kinds of different things. Actually really motivates people. So I love that you're wrestling with it.
Thanks,
asking
Daryl.
the right questions, yeah, yes. Yeah, see if you can toss it.
You get the box.
Oh, there you go, that was a safe toss. Next toss should be across the room.
Ryan Schatzer, Intermountain Health. How do you balance out maybe, you know, newer or less on the maturity model of tech startups and experimenting with them? Because sometimes it's difficult to implement as well as scale versus just not waiting, but relying on Workday, Epic, Microsoft, that we have the big systems to build that capability within.
Yeah. So startups by themselves, here's largely the tech problem. Let me just start there. So the tech problem is there's this crusty old ERP layer, kind of infrastructure layer, EHR layer, big, wide, somewhat slow moving. Epic is probably the superior record and growing its market share quickly. And Judy wants to control the world, right? So they're, you know, they want to attack every problem. Epic and that bottom, that infrastructure layer, has the same problem you have at Intermountain, which is a one-off competitor can do retail primary care better than you can, because you're a massive health system and you're trying to do everything reasonably well. You probably have some pretty good primary care. You probably have some crappy primary care. I don't know. But that's probably true because it was true in my health system. One Medical can come in and provide consistent primary care and a retail experience that's pretty standardized. Epic can create all these capabilities, but they're going to be like a 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. If you want to check the box, you can check the box. But there are 9 and 10 out of 10s out there. So here's the question. Because then you've got the point solution layer, which is a huge vulnerability. If you just go and get a bunch of point solutions, it's like saying healthcare is fragmented and then taking the puzzle box and throwing the pieces all over town. We have a bunch of new pieces, but they're just not put together. That's what systems are doing. We have 22 health system partners, Intermountain's one of them, and systems are like building these point solution layers with no integration, no interoperability. And one of our partners said, we have a digital experience platform, not Intermountain. We have a digital experience platform. I said, oh, that's so cool. I cannot wait to explore it. What is it? Well, it's 12 apps that we've bought. That's amazing. So how's it integrated? Oh, it's not. It's 12 apps. People get the apps they need. Okay. As I dug and dug on that question, to your point, I get to storytelling. You got to look at the time. As I dug and dug on that question, I discovered that the 12 apps delivered 3 different sensor scales to people's homes depending on their chronic condition. And they were real customers of this system who received more than one sensor scale for their bathroom because they happen to have CHF and diabetes, and the 2 apps use 2 different branded sensor scales. The 2 apps, by the way, could get a feed from the same sensor scale, but no one had even done that light work to get that to happen. That's the sloppiness you're referencing. So we believe there's a missing middleware, a middle layer of interoperability where the integration to Epic or Oracle Cerner can be made, or Meditech can be made. We're in deep negotiations around this now and see real potential. And then the point solution layer can be intentionally organized so that you can have what Epic does, use it to your heart's content, recognize the gaps, and then add ready point solutions to the top. The second thing is you can't just take a startup and compare it to another startup and another startup. They're all separate companies, right? In our portfolio, we have over 120 healthcare companies. 36 of them are reasonable solutions for enterprise healthcare systems. Out of the 36, 12 are early. And if I came to you, I would say, this is a development project. You're not going to pay a commercial rate. You're going to help us figure this out. 12 of them are what I'd call rising. They need more mentoring and strategy development. And only about 12 are like out of the box, kind of like Microsoft, where you could plug it in and I'd say it's going to work well. You've just got to be honest about that capability. But you're going to get the best performance out of a combination of the big stuff, the big tech, and the small tech. And anyone who wants to just eliminate small tech will not perform as well as their competitor who chooses to integrate the two. And that's an absolute reality and belief that I have. So the old CIOs out there who are like, we're done, we have Epic, argue with them, please, because Epic will be a ceiling on your innovation if you take that approach to it. Minute and a half. Who's final question? Oh, I love this toss. Over the flowers, perfect.
Does it still work?
I love it. It works and everything.
Yeah, I'm Michael from InHealth. I've worked for not-for-profit healthcare my entire career. And I think you come from a blue zone, right? You come from Loma Linda, you know that culture. And you talked earlier about hospitals were a real place of trauma, but we all have experienced them as communities throughout our lives. How do we take lessons from a place like a blue zone and then apply it to our organizations and say, how do we make them what we aspire them to be, places of healing and hope? You know, how do you see that from your view? And then where do you see private equity fit in that? And how does that work?
Absolutely. So, starting with the last question, I think there's a lot of terrible motivation in private equity that makes it a risky partner if you don't understand the purpose and the model that it's trying to build. You know, they'll acquire things, squeeze the sponge, leverage them up, kind of break the organization, spin them out, and it never quite recovers. So private equity is not private equity is not private equity. Very important to understand who's doing what and why are they doing it. However, private capital or private funds that are aimed in the right way to help transform healthcare in a way that's economically viable and purpose-driven, I think is very compelling, because then it takes health systems and their capital, and it takes private capital, and can make really spectacular things happen. And private capital has made all of the industry transformations happen across all of the industries, from travel to finance and banking to retail. So private capital is okay as long as it's aimed at true transformation and not, squeezing the sponge. That's important. Around the concept of a blue zone, creating that for your team is amazing. Creating that for your community is even better. And it should start with your team. I think start with your team first. If your team's broken and you're doing it for the community like some systems do, people get frustrated, right? So what does that mean? That means a reasonable work-life balance and work-life integration. Really important. It means some actual encouragement to take break time, to exercise, and take vacations. It's amazing what's valued in healthcare. You know what? That guy worked constantly. He's amazing. You honor it. It's like a badge of honor. You give people that badge because they work so hard all the time. What are you motivating? What are you motivating, right? Motivating quality work and good balance is critical. And there's a long list of those things. A belief in something, right? Incredibly important. How do you foster that? Including a belief in your purpose along with a higher power or other types of really important things people need to connect with. I love your question. It's a good one. I know I'm out of time. I see conferring among the back. How do we get him off? Do we start the music? So I just want to say it is phenomenal to spend time with you. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here.